So hello, my name is Gabe Holgin. I'm the Fire and Aviation Staff Officer on the Gila National Forest. And if you're checking out this video, you're probably planning a trip on the Continental Divide Trail. Whether you're a day hiker or a through hiker, I got some valuable information for you in regards to fire management and fire safety. So a few things, if you're planning a trip on the CDT, there's a few things you ought to consider. One of them is, what's the seasonal outlook? What's the potential for wildfires during your time or your visit to the CDT? And one place to find some great information for that would be nmfireinfo.com. That's a great source of information for current outlooks and any sort of significant fire potential. Another great source of information is on weather. It's just weather.gov. So if you get on weather.gov, it'll give you current and forecasted weather. Keep in mind, forecasted weather is only good for about 3 or 5 days out, but there are some extended outlooks on there that you could take a look at. There's 6 to 10 day products, 8 to 12 day products, and they would cover a longer duration for your trip if you're planning on backpacking up the CDT. Another great source of information is your local Forest Service office. If you're planning on coming through the Gila National Forest, you can call 575-388-8201, and that'll get you to the front desk, and they would be able to direct your call to either our public affairs officer, myself, the fire management officer, and we would be able to provide you some information on current fire activity on the Gila National Forest and areas to be concerned about. So the other thing to consider is fires that occurred in previous years, because those can sometimes cause erosion problems, problems with the trail. There may be some reroutes, that sort of thing, because of those burn scars, and depending on the time that you're passing through, there may be closures in place if there's thunderstorm activity, and we're concerned about flooding and erosion and that kind of thing. So we'd be a source of information for that type of stuff as well. Let's see here. So information on fires that are currently burning on the Gila National Forest. A great source of info is INCIWeb, and if you would just Google INCIWeb, it would take you, probably the first link that you'd find would be for that web page, and that would give you the most up-to-date information on incidents that are, of significance of any size. Probably fires that are from a few hundred acres to several thousand acres. You would find that info on INCIWeb. Also, very important when you're planning your trip is to leave a detailed trip plan with your friends or family. Leave it with someone so that in the event that you do get diverted, or that you didn't check in at a certain time, that people would know what your itinerary looked like, so that they could track you down. So the next thing I wanted to talk about is communications. Most of the Gila National Forest, you're not going to have cell phone service. If you're lucky, when you're up higher on the CDT, you might get service here and there, but I would highly recommend that you consider using a satellite communicator, something like a Garmin InReach or a Spot, some other satellite messenger. Those are way more reliable than cell phones, and probably more reliable than satellite phones as well. So the other thing that I would also consider when you go backpacking or hiking on the CDT, in the event that you do find yourself in trouble and we end up having to do any sort of search and rescue, would be to carry a signal mirror or a strobe light. Some of those high-powered strobe lights are very effective. As a matter of fact, we use them in fire management all the time now to signal aircraft that we're using for operational stuff. But having a strobe or a signal mirror to really pinpoint your location is not a bad idea. So That's about it on communications. So getting to kind of the meat of the presentation here, if you do encounter a wildfire, here's some tips for you that will go a long way and help you to stay out of trouble. So the first indicator that there's a wildfire around is you're probably going to see or smell smoke. So if you do encounter wildfire smoke, that's a good indicator that there's a wildfire nearby. So just keep that in mind. The larger the column, the bigger the fire. So if you see a large column of smoke, it looks like a thunderstorm, that's probably a good indicator that the fire's large and behaving very aggressively and growing very rapidly. So it's a good indicator to get out of the area. The direction that the smoke column is bending is an indicator of the direction that the wind is coming from, but more importantly, it's also an indicator of the direction that the fire is moving. So if you see a large column, it's bent over because the wind is blowing it in that direction, it's probably a good idea to not continue going into that direction. You probably want to turn back, wait it out, see what that column does, but you definitely do not want to get any closer to that column of smoke. Okay, so if you see flames, that's definitely more concerning for me and more concerning for your safety. If you see flames, you should not continue to move forward. Flames or burning material on the ground, smoldering material on the ground, you should really reevaluate the direction that you're traveling at that point, and you should head away from that fire and not enter that burning area. The flames are a safety concern for you, but there's a high likelihood that if there's an area on fire and you're running into flames, that there could be trees on fire, and trees that are burning pose a overhead concern for you. There could be branches that are falling out of them that are on fire. The entire trees could fall over, tops of trees could break out. So it's really a dangerous situation if you find yourself in the area that's burning. Let's see. Yeah, so really a rising smoke column in front of you is a good indicator that you really need to reevaluate where you're heading and maybe change course for a few days, reroute to get around that, or go back the way you came. Okay, let's see here. Remember, a couple of key things here is that fire moves faster uphill than downhill. That's just a rule of thumb in fire behavior. So if you see fire below you, just know that when the wind and the slope and the terrain, everything aligns, the fire is going to move very rapidly uphill because all that material above the flames becomes preheated, and so it burns more rapidly when the flames touch it. The other thing, is related to weather, and I touched on thunderstorms a second ago, but if you do see thunderstorms developing, once they're fully mature, fully developed, they're going to start producing lightning. A lot of times in the month of June, even late May, on the Gila National Forest, we'll get thunderstorms, and those will produce mostly dry lightning. We don't get those wet storms until July. So usually around the 4th of July it'll transition and we'll start getting rain with those thunderstorms. But prior to that, if you're traveling through the Gila on the CDT, most thunderstorms are going to produce dry lightning, and dry lightning produces wildfires, so keep that in mind as well. Lastly, I wanted to touch on campfire safety. So before lighting that campfire, one thing that's really important for you and for me as a fire manager is to make sure that we are not in restrictions on the Gila National Forest. A good source of information is the Gila National Forest's webpage, NM Fire Info. You can call the number that I gave you earlier. All those sources of information will let you know if we're in restrictions or not. Also, trailheads are posted, but if you're there's a possibility that you started your hike before we were in restrictions, and you know, you're in the middle of your trip at that time when we may go into restrictions. So just try to make sure you have the most up-to-date information on restrictions. There's several stages of restrictions. You know, they range from smoking and campfire restrictions all the way to full closures. So it's important to know what stage of restrictions that we're in. Let's see, as far as campfire safety goes, you know, make sure that if you do have the need to build a campfire, make sure that you're clearing around the area where you build your campfire, and that, you know, it doesn't have the opportunity to escape your campfire ring. Make sure it's just clear of vegetation and down to bare mineral soil. So don't ever leave your campfire unattended. I mean, make sure you put your fire out, make sure you're with it when it's burning. Don't leave it to go on a hike, you know, and then come back and expect that, you know, that it's going to be in the same place. Really just, you know, follow that campfire etiquette. Make sure your fire is dead out also when you leave it. You know, I know water's at a premium, but if you don't have water to put out a fire, then maybe you shouldn't even be building one. So, you know, but if you do build one, make sure you douse that fire, make sure you mix in some dirt, stir it, make a little bit of mud, apply more water, stir it, you know, just kind of rinse and repeat, and you know, make sure that fire is dead out so that we don't have any issues later and your fire doesn't escape and I have to send firefighters to go and put it out. So let's see here. So I guess those are kind of my tips for you know, for trip planning and campfire safety and whatnot. But I want to give you some current conditions here on the Gila National Forest. And today is what's today? April 18th. Today is April 18th, and right now, you know, I would say current conditions on the Gila are kind of normal. You know, a trend that we use to kind of track fire season potential and severity is called our energy release component. It's basically the amount of heat that the flaming front of a fire will put off. It's measured in BTUs, and right now we're probably at average. So conditions are not extreme. We actually, our ERCs are trending on average, which is a good thing. I would say our fire danger right now is moderate, which is, you know, it's also not extreme. And so yeah, it's kind of normal for this time of year. There's a lot of factors that we take into consideration to predict kind of the fire season potential. And you know, the first of those factors is what state is the drought right now. So right now our drought's been relieved. We're not in drought. You know, we had a great monsoon season last year, and we had a lot of moisture this winter in the form of snow and rain. You know, the creeks are running, the rivers are high, the lakes are filling up. You know, the live fuel moistures are really high right now, and so, you know, our drought's kind of been relieved. So that's kind of a good thing right now. But along with that great monsoon season that we had in 2022, you know, it lasted from started in mid-June and probably went into mid-September, and you know, a lot of rain, more than average. But one consequence of all that nice moisture in the fall was that we grew a lot of grass. So we have an abundance of grass right now, and we call that fine fuel in fire. And you know, fine fuels in the Southwest are the primary carrier of wildfires, and so, you know, just keep that in mind. You know, there's an abundance of fine fuels right now, and we are anticipating that as the spring green up ends and those fuels cure out, that we have the potential to have large fast moving fires. And I would expect the same up on the CDT. You know, if you're in an area where there's a lot of grass, just be aware of that. You know, be cautious of that. If you don't need a campfire, don't make one. but because there is a lot of fine fuel out there, and fine fuels burn rapidly, and you know, if you did have an escape campfire, you could find yourself in a dicey situation. So you know, this we've had, like I talked about, you know, we had a very active weather pattern this spring, winter and spring, lots of moisture, lots of storms, that backdoor cold fronts that came down and actually gave us moisture this spring. So that's a factor that'll influence fire behavior. You know, the longer that we get spring moisture, the more potential we have for a green up. You know, late spring, early summer, and when we do get that green up, it sort of delays fire season. So we are, you know, we'll have a decent green up this year, and it will slow down fire season. But yeah, there still is that potential with all that grass that we grew last year. Let's see, there are some predictions out there, and you know, I'm not a weatherman or a climatologist, but I would say you know, take a look at weather.gov. Some of those longer term predictions are saying that April and May are supposed to be a little cooler than normal. We're supposed to get a little more precipitation than normal. But really, what is normal? So this time of year on the Gila National Forest, we typically don't get a lot of moisture. It's a pretty small amount in these months in the springtime, and so, you know, when I see something that says, you know, above average precipitation, it really just means, you know, we could get half an inch more than what's normal, and which really doesn't amount to much this time of year. That'll burn off and dry up real quick. The other big indicator, and you know, is the timing of the monsoon and when that actually comes on. Like I said, last year, you know, by the middle of June, we were in monsoon season. That was really an anomaly. You know, typically our monsoon in the Southwest, at least as long as I've been here on the Gila National Forest, has been right around the 4th of July. That's, you know, you can almost guarantee that it's going to rain at the 4th of July parade. So just kind of keep that date in mind. You know, that's a great time to be hiking up there, is when you get you know, some of those afternoon thunderstorms, and you know, it cools off after you've been hiking all day. But again, be aware of that thunderstorm safety and the potential for flash flooding. So, and I think that's about all I had to cover. I just want to say, you know, be safe, have fun out there on the CDT. It's a great trail. This section on the Gila is pretty exciting, pretty challenging sometimes, but you know, great views, and you'll have a good time. So enjoy.